Welcome to the Financial Freedom Guy podcast, and I have my friend here, Kate. We met at a Chamber of Commerce event, and Kate is a people's expert. So, I'm a finance guy, financial freedom. So I've come to know that the difference between, a business owner's vision coming true versus not true, it's the people. People are the X factor. So, Kate, with that, tell us a little bit about yourself. And
Sure.
then I got some questions about the trends that you're seeing with people, the X factor.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot for the opportunity to be on your podcast. Like you said, we met at a Chamber of Commerce event. And I always remember you said your last name is McLaren. Like, I think you referenced a movie from the 80s, which I
Yeah.
believe was Back to the Future.
Yeah, McLaren's a famous car, right? Some people,
Yeah.
I don't have one. I'm more conservative than that. But McLaren, that part of the family has race cars.
Okay. I like it. I like it. So at Mount Vernon Consulting, we provide customized learning to create more engaged employees. So, what does that mean? We do it through training. We do it through various learning opportunities. That could be e-learning, live learning. It could be just-in-time resources. If you're onboarding new employees and you're looking for ways to make sure that they effectively ramp up and can do their job, that's what we do. We come in, we facilitate lots of different types of team dynamics. So we really look at the people side of your company. I love it. I've been doing this for over 20 years now. I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area. So obviously I've done a lot of work with and for federal government, but we've also been expanding and working with a lot of larger private organizations, even beyond the government space.
Yeah, and it's I'm just kind of curious. How did you get into starting your own business? It can be a big decision.
Yeah. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad ran an insurance company for many, many years.
Yeah.
And I worked in private sector. Well, I started off private sector, then I worked for a nonprofit where we ran a leadership training program for federal employees. So that was my initial introduction to federal government. Then one of the individuals I trained actually then hired me as a term position in the federal government. And then when that term was up, I said thank you for that experience, but I'd rather work on the external side of government. So I moved into working for a consulting firm. Did that for many years, working for a larger firm. And then just based on the needs, I had a really young family at the time. And I, believe it or not, I actually went into entrepreneurship for more flexibility, which you don't always hear that, but I had a little bit more influence over the types of projects that I worked on, the types of clients that I worked on. And so 6.5 years later, we are rocking and rolling. We've grown every year, and it's been a really fun adventure.
Yeah, so the main motivation is you can set your own destiny as an entrepreneur. You can work with who you want to work with, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And when I was working for the larger firm, I was commuting an hour and a half each way. And I was one of the last ones to scoot into daycare every day. And after about 2 years of that, I realized that that was just not balancing out the needs of our family.
Yeah.
So my husband and I had an agreement. I could do this for a year and we would see how it went. And if it was an epic failure, I'd go back into the mainstream workforce. But here we are, 6.5 years later, and
Yeah.
it's been really fun.
An epic success.
There
Right?
you go. There
There you
you
go.
go.
Okay, so let's talk about the trends. Like, a lot has changed, the pre-COVID world, the post-COVID world. So what trends are you seeing, like, right now?
Yeah. Well, I think first thing to consider is that the COVID and post-COVID workforce is just completely different than how we used to work, right? And when we think about the evolution of the modern American workforce, we had the Industrial Revolution, which provided a massive change in how American workers did their work. Then we had another major shift was when we had the introduction of the internet. And so now we're looking at that third massive change in the workplace, which is around the pandemic. So for those that have been working for many years, some of you might have gone through two evolutions, right? We went through that whole internet, World Wide Web, everyone having computers in the workplace. And now we're looking at a much more mobile workplace, a much more agile workplace. We've got right now, what we're seeing at the beginning of 2025 is we're still seeing that debate about returning to work, about, do we have everyone in the office? Do we have them in 5 days a week? With a change in administration that's coming in about, a week and a half, 2 weeks, there has been definitely a push to bring more people back physically into the workplace. So you're finding that what's the most recent data is indicating is that most employees, most white collar employees who have had that option to work from home are open to and embrace the idea of coming into the office about 2 to 3 days a week.
Okay.
When they do come in, they want to make sure that everyone else is in at the same time. So they use that as their max collaboration time. And then those other 2 to 3 days a week that they're not in the office, that's when they're really doing a lot of that heads down, hard thinking work that doesn't involve a lot of distractions.
That could actually lead to more efficiency, right? Where there's a focus, there's a day to collaborate, open up. So the mindset is that way. Then there's other days where there's focus and I'm gonna get it done. Produce, deliver. That's interesting. But 2 to 3 days per week is kind of where people are coming in at as a reasonable expectation.
That's what we're seeing is that, now that we're about 5 years post-pandemic, we're seeing that that's where it's settling, right? What is not working particularly successfully right now is to have a workforce that had been 100% remote and then mandating a certain date that everyone must be in the office 5 days a week. Again, when we talk about that evolution of what the workforce has looked like, many of us have been able to figure out ways to balance work and caregiving and other personal responsibilities. To abruptly then say, in 30 days or in 2 weeks, we need everyone back in the office full time is really creating a lot of tension. It creates, just even think about it from a parent caregiving perspective. You got to adjust your work hours, your drop off and pick up at daycare, etc. It's huge amounts of implications. Another trend that we're seeing to kind of play off of this is we are seeing that this is a workforce where there are not enough employees out there to fill the jobs that are needed, right? So meaning that there are more jobs than there are available employees in the workforce. And we're finding that's due to many factors. We've got lower birth rates. We've had lots of changes to our immigration policies. And despite AI coming out, my biggest advice right now about AI is don't listen to anyone's advice, right? Because you have some people telling you in 5 years AI will be your manager. And then we have other people telling you in 5 years AI will be much more regulated. Who knows, right? Who knows? But what we do know, what the data is telling us, is that we don't have as many employees in the workforce that we do have jobs. So what that means, going back to the whole bringing people back into the workforce or back in, in person, what that means is if an employee perceives that the benefits are not worth it, they will leave the organization. So we're finding that really employee benefits, and that's not just great healthcare, right? That means flexibility in the workplace. That means, providing some of that opportunity for childcare, daycare, caregiving roles, responsibilities, etc. We're finding giving more flexibility for medical appointments in the middle of the day. Pet insurance, believe it or not, is a huge incentive right now. People are loving pet insurance. They got all these COVID pets, right? We love our pups.
Yeah.
And so when we're thinking about expanding benefits, really the employee needs to be really critical about looking at it's not just an increase in salary, right? It's an increase in what's important to them. And maybe that is a work-life balance. Maybe that is the pet insurance, right? So from an employer's perspective, it's important to listen to your employees to make sure, because they're your most valuable asset. And if you want to retain your employees, you need to be listening to them, providing the resources that they need, because if they don't perceive it to be that way, they're going to jump ship and go to another organization, because many other companies out there are hiring and looking for good employees.
Yeah, and especially like the A players and B players, right? Those are the ones that you want to really do something with.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about just sharing experience with it? Like when I see a team member, if they're like their personal life, vision, and passion, when it's aligned, like aligned with the the business vision and culture kind of stuff, and it's, like working here really gets them, where they want to be in life. Mm-hmm. It's just the level of effort. Like one is they're running with it, proactive, responsive, versus if it's a fundamental disconnect or disengage and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. What are the kinds of things that either a business owner or a manager can do to really get to know that person that help both parties achieve alignment in the workplace, ultimately for business owners?
Yeah, I mean, every manager or owner of a business wants to have an entire staff full of deeply motivated people who have bought into the mission of the organization. I read this really interesting article recently that I took a little to heart, because I'm a business owner and a manager, right? And it was talking about, what did it say? It said, no employee out there believes as much in your business as you do. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting way to look at it, right? Because it is my baby, right? When you're a business owner, it's your company, it's what you're running. And yes, you have these employees, but the way that they look at it and their buy-in to it will never match your level of passion. And so I think just having an awareness about that. Right. The other thing is, if we think about just basic team dynamics, there is a model that talks about, it's called forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And if we think about that, that is the natural life cycle of how team dynamics works. Yeah. And conflict in the workplace, not a bad thing necessarily. People think that it means that there's something wrong. In fact, in order to evolve and to be a more effective team, you actually have to go through that storming phase. And that's where a lot of that conflict happens. So I think managers sometimes don't want to deal with the drama or the conflict because they think that they don't have time for it, or they think people should just work it out themselves. That's where people like my organization come into play, right? We work with a lot of conflict management. We work with lots of teams that are full of really strong, productive individuals. But when you get them together for whatever reason, they're not getting along. They're not communicating. They're not trusting. There's ego involved sometimes. There's a complete lack of awareness of how to do the job. And so what my team does is we come in and we either provide one-off trainings. Sometimes we'll put together entire training plans or learning plans. We do lots of team dynamics. We're certified as everything DISC practitioners, so that is a wonderful assessment to help get to understand who you are as an individual. And the Everything DISC assessment really has evolved since the pandemic. They've created an online platform now where you can actually go online, look at the team, your entire team that has taken the assessment, and you can look at where your team's strengths are, where your team's weaknesses are, where your team is likely going to have that conflict. You can even narrow it down to look up. Let's say Kirk and I were just really having issues and not seeing eye to eye on something. I could look up Kirk's profile through the Everything DISC Catalyst platform, it's called, and it could say how to communicate with Kirk based on your personality style and his. Here's some ways that you could manage that conversation. right? And so your personality style might be very different than another person in the workforce. So it gives you this customized solution of how to actually work and communicate with them.
Wow, that's a good evolution. I didn't realize that it's evolved with that kind of tool where I can say, I'm approaching a certain person, how to do it more effectively. Let's keep following some of this. Where, like the next thing, like we talked in a previous discussion, we talked about how things have changed. Where it used to be pedigree on the recruiting side, and now you're seeing more skills. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the trends that we're seeing in the workplace. And, for my millennial generation and those of our that are, in Gen X and baby boomers, et cetera, where you went to school and what your pedigree was very important for a lot of these white collar jobs. Right. And so, you would see things even on when I worked in the government or when I was responding to government proposals, it would say, masters must have a master's degree or equivalent of 12 years of experience, something like that. What we're finding now in the workplace, again, we're seeing a couple things. We're seeing a little bit of a pushback towards higher education based on the sheer cost of it. What we're also finding is people that are spending their time and energy developing specific skills rather than, let's say, going to a 4-year degree or getting a master's degree. So what we're finding is, or this shift that we're going to be seeing in the next few years, is this trend towards skills-based hiring rather than pedigree-based hiring.
Yeah,
So,
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Because, I care about skills, including soft skills. Can you communicate, engage people, listen, and then using whatever technical skill the person has to elevate the outcome, effectiveness. What you have on your wall, okay. Yeah, I'm sure that's fine. But I'm loving it. I mean, do you have any kind of reaction to that? Is it good? Is it bad?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm a liberal arts major, and I studied journalism and writing and public relations, and then had no idea what to do when I graduated from college, right? So what I do think is that from a liberal arts perspective, I did learn critical thinking. I learned how to challenge and question and write, and I think that's a skill that is not something that you often see on, let's say, a job posting, right? Like, I'd like someone who's a really strong critical thinker, right? So I think in the past we have maybe thought, I remember someone telling me, oh, well, they have a master's degree, so clearly they've proven they can be a critical thinker.
Yeah, hardly.
No.
Yeah.
Right. So I think in the past we maybe had assumed that increased education meant that you had some of those skills. But what we're seeing is, you're right. Those soft skills, especially with AI, right? Especially with AI coming in, the soft skills are what is going to differentiate a good employee from a successful employee.
Yeah.
Right? The ability to look at something that's AI generated, look at it critically and say, that's not exactly the tone that I wanted. That's not exactly the message that I wanted. Let's tweak it. Let's work with it. Right? Someone that can just produce outputs that's what is going to happen with AI. Right? Yeah. So adding that critical component and the ability to interact with other people. Right? Yeah. You could be a great at data mining, right? Really technical, type of information and data. But if you can't take that information and translate it into common speak, or if you can't present it effectively, or if you don't know how to, pare down that data to the key audience, then that's what's going to make you successful or make you not successful in the workplace.
That's a brilliant insight. So the machines are going to do at least some portion of the legwork, a lot, a little, most, whatever it is. And so you're describing that human skill. Who's my audience? What would be useful to them? How do I communicate that? How do I help them follow through with that better insight? Whatever that deliverable is. That's that's a beautiful thing, right? Being liberated to be more human. So
right.
Yeah. So let's kind of think for a minute. So I want to think kind of like problem solution. When somebody says, Kate, I need your help, first time manager, whatever it is, when do you come onto the scene, and what could somebody expect to experience from you?
Yeah. So I love working with organizations that are going through a major change. So we typically work with companies that are about 500 to 5,000, which I know is a pretty wide range.
And that's this big.
Yeah, that's pretty big. We go down to maybe, well, I say 500. We actually go down to about 100 because what we find is for these really small companies, things are great. Things are moving smoothly. They've got a great team moving, but all of a sudden they either win a large contract or for whatever reason they're growing, right? Which is what we want our companies to do. But when you bring on more people, you bring on more challenges. What we find also is that oftentimes there's companies where maybe you had your core 20, 50 people that were there at the startup of the company. And then as they grew, those technical people who were really strong and hired because of their technical capabilities, they were in the right place at the right time, so they got promoted, right? Doesn't mean that they necessarily should have been promoted. So I do work a lot with organizations who are then backpedaling and saying, oh, we got ourselves into a bit of a pickle here. Yeah. So, this person was really, really good at knowing that technical side, but the people side of it, we find that they're losing employees all the time, or people are filing complaints, and I'm constantly having conversations with them. That's where my company comes in. We provide a lot of training for first-line supervisors. We provide a lot of guidance for, lately, we've been doing a lot with getting supervisors and managers to acknowledge that they're supervisors and managers, right? Because that's one of the biggest transitions that you can make in the workplace, from being an individual contributor to being a supervisor. So many people don't like that, and they'll be dragged along kicking and screaming. And so trying to work with people to have, sometimes we call it executive presence. Sometimes it's just really thinking like a leader. Through that is components of delegation, trust. How do you build trust? So we work a lot with those supervisors who are struggling to make that transition to how to give feedback to their employees, how to build effective teams, how to manage them effectively, how to motivate them. So that's where we come in. And then that everything disc is a huge, huge asset when we're trying to get people to have, one, self-awareness, and then two, using it as a framework to understand how their team works together, where there might be some gaps, and how they can work more effectively together.
And so you have the mix. You have you have the tools. So you clear on different personalities how to mix. You understand where they're at in the stage. Might be promoted just because good at the technical stuff, and then individuals, group training, and you're getting them to that desired outcome where conflict, friction. It's, moving the team from storming to norming, performing kind of thing. It sounds like. Yeah. And it's always happening, right? It's always happening. I like to joke that I have a lot of job security because teams are constantly evolving. Organizations are merging. Organizations are growing rapidly, right? These are the people side of things. And if you cannot manage that, and if you can't motivate them to move past it, then you're not going to get the results that you need as you are running your company. Right? The people are the very pesky component of a job. If we could just get rid of the people, we could all do our jobs so much more effectively. But here's the thing. The people are what make us do our work. And so if we don't take the time to develop them and grow them and spend the time coaching them, then we are not going to have them buy into and want to be motivated to support the growth of your organization. Yeah, it really sounds like we make the investment preferably proactively, right? Get right fit, right promotion, right skills to be successful proactively. Otherwise, you're either going to pay for it as an investment or as a cost, right? When there's turnover and there's friction and things don't get done and people aren't communicating. And So with that, what is to come in for a landing here? What is the best way for a person to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so the best way is through our website, which is mountvernon.consulting.com, and it's MT. So mtvernon.consulting.com. You can also follow me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So you can look for me as Kate Vendemio, or you can look for the company, Mount Vernon Consulting. And then we also have a newsletter. So you are always welcome to sign up for that. There's a prompt on our website for that.
Right. And if anybody can't find Kate with all that, find me, and I'll help you find Kate. I mean, we'll make the connection because it really does. I think no one can do it themselves. You need experts at different points of the journey. Bring them in, preferably proactively. Most of the time we do it reactively, but that's fine. Let's get on it and do it. So, hey, Kate, with that, thank you very much for being my guest and helping
Thank
us
you.
think more about from a leader manager standpoint, what's the best approach now, given the world that we're in, which is different. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yep. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks.